The most dysfunctional NFL team of all time. Quarterback. Michael Vick entered the NFL as a problem defenses had no answer to. Drafted first overall in 2001, he didn't just play quarterback.
I'd gone through that type of ability with John Elway, going, no, yes.
He bent the position into something unrecognizable, blowing past defenders with open field speed and firing deep throws while barely setting his feet. By 2004, he had carried the Falcons to the NFC Championship and signed a massive contract that made him the face of the franchise. While his football life soared, something far darker was happening away from the field. On his Virginia property, Vick helped run a dogfighting operation called Bad News Kennels, complete with training equipment, fight pits, and records showing brutal outcomes for animals that failed to perform. When federal investigators uncovered the operation in 2007, the fall was immediate and total. Vick pleaded guilty, was sentenced to prison, and received an indefinite NFL suspension. Atlanta erased him from the building almost overnight, and teammates were left stunned. Vick eventually returned and rebuilt part of his career, but the damage never fully faded. On this team, he represents unmatched talent paired with decisions that destroyed everything built around him. Backup quarterback. Johnny Manziel felt like a cultural moment before he ever took an NFL snap. At Texas A&M, he played with chaos and confidence.
Winner of the Heisman Memorial Trophy is Johnny Manziel.
Winning the Heisman Trophy as a freshman while scrambling through defenses that looked helpless trying to contain him. Cleveland believed that magic could save a franchise drowning in failure. So they drafted him in 2014 and handed him attention he had never earned professionally. The problem was that the spotlight mattered more to him than the work. Manziel struggled to learn the playbook, skipped meetings, and frustrated coaches who wanted to discipline instead of headlines. Away from the field, stories kept leaking about late nights, missed practices, and behavior that made teammates question his priorities. The trust eroded quickly, and the production never arrived. By his second season, Cleveland had already lost patience, benching him and eventually cutting him loose. Manziel later admitted he was not ready for the league or the responsibility that came with it. As a backup quarterback, he fits perfectly. Confidence without structure, fame without preparation, and chaos always waiting if he is needed. Running back. O.J. Simpson once represented football at its absolute peak. He won the Heisman Trophy at USC, then became the centerpiece of the Buffalo Bills and one of the most recognizable athletes in America. In 1973, he rushed for over 2,000 yards in just 14 games, a record that felt untouchable at the time. Simpson crossed into movies, commercials, and television, becoming more than just an athlete. He was a celebrity people trusted, but they were proven wrong pretty quickly. After retirement, his image completely cracked. In 1994, Simpson was charged in the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, turning the country into a courtroom audience. The trial dominated television, completely divided public opinion, and ended with a not guilty verdict in possibly the largest court case of all time. A civil court later found him responsible, sealing a permanent stain to his legacy. But years later, another downfall followed him when he was arrested in Las Vegas for a robbery involving sports memorabilia. On this team, OJ defines dysfunction, a once beloved star whose achievements can never escape the shadow that followed. Wide receiver 1. Antonio Brown's rise was built on obsession and defiance. Drafted late and overlooked, he transformed himself into the most productive receiver in football through precision, effort, and relentless drive. From 2013 to 2018, he completely dominated in Pittsburgh, stacking catches and yards while looking like a future Hall of Famer. Over time, success began to warp everything around him though. Brown clashed with teammates, skipped practices, and turned minor disagreements into public explosions. His exit from Pittsburgh was loud, a trade to Oakland even louder. It collapsed after a helmet dispute and heated confrontations, ending before the season even began. Somehow, New England gave him a second chance, but accusations surfaced almost immediately, and he was gone after one game. Tampa Bay offered the final lifeline, which ended when Brown was walked off the field mid-game, throwing his uniform into the crowd with his shirt off and screaming. Since then, his story has been even more off the rails. He's been defined by social media rants and constant controversy. On this team, Brown is the perfect number one receiver. Game-breaking talent paired with instability so strong it eventually overwhelms every locker room he enters. Wide receiver 2. Plaxico Burress always felt built for chaos moments. When defenses tightened and the margin for error disappeared, he got bigger, calmer, and harder to stop somehow, which is exactly why Eli Manning kept looking for him when Super Bowl 42 was on the line. One throw, one catch, and Burress ripped perfection away from New England, instantly becoming a Giants legend. But that same confidence off the field turned reckless. In 2008, Burress walked into a Manhattan nightclub carrying a loaded gun tucked into his waistband, convinced nothing bad could happen, yet it did. The weapon slipped, fired, and tore through his leg, turning a night out into a legal nightmare. Instead of calling police, Burress tried to disappear, which only deepened the fallout once the truth came out. Charges followed, then a prison sentence that stole nearly 2 full seasons from the heart of his career. The Giants moved forward without him, and the league never fully circled back. Short stints elsewhere felt hollow, like echoes of a player who used to matter. On this team, Burress belongs because his career proves how fast superstardom collapses when one careless choice outweighs years of clutch brilliance. Tight end. Aaron Hernandez looked like the future of the tight end position. At Florida, he was part of a championship offense, then joined New England and became a nightmare matchup alongside Rob Gronkowski. But behind the scenes, something far more troubling was unfolding. In 2013, Hernandez was arrested in connection with the death of Odin Lloyd, and the league was stunned by how quickly the story escalated. Investigators uncovered evidence pointing to a violent circle, hidden behavior, and earlier incidents that painted a disturbing picture. New England cut ties immediately, erasing him from the roster without hesitation. But Hernandez was not done. He was later convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Then, while incarcerated, more details surfaced about his past, including unresolved trauma and massive personal struggles. In 2017, he unfortunately took his life while behind bars, closing the story in tragedy. While technically he wouldn't be capable of joining this team, Hernandez represents total breakdown. A position built on trust, completely destroyed by secrets, violence, and a collapse that was so severe, how could anybody else fill this tight end position than him? Offensive lineman. Richie Incognito built his career on being the meanest person on the field, and for a long time, teams treated that as a feature instead of a problem. He played through pain, finished blocks late, and carried a reputation as someone you never wanted lined up across from you. But in Miami, that edge crossed into something far darker. In 2013, text messages surfaced showing Incognito threatening teammate Jonathan Martin with violence, mocking his family, and firing off slurs that went far beyond trash talk. One voicemail warned Martin not to step foot in the locker room again, blurring the line between intimidation and menace. Martin abruptly left the team, and the Dolphins were thrown into a national scandal that exposed how unchecked behavior had been normalized inside the building. The league suspended Incognito. The locker room splintered. Miami's season unraveled in public. Years later, when Martin complicated the narrative by re-examining his own role, Incognito responded with furious social media tirades instead of reflection. On this team, Incognito belongs because offensive lines survive on trust. When fear replaces protection, the foundation completely collapses, and no amount of toughness can save it. Linebacker. Lawrence Taylor didn't just change football, he changed how dangerous it felt. On the field, he completely terrorized quarterbacks, shattered game plans, and redefined what a linebacker could be, winning MVP and leading dominant Giants defenses. Off the field, however, the chaos never stopped. Taylor partied hard, used substances openly, and treated rules like suggestions, even showing up late or not at all to meetings. Teammates never knew which version they were getting, the unstoppable force or the liability no one could control. Stories followed him everywhere, from failing tests to arrests to showing up in handcuffs before meetings, and yet he kept playing at an elite level somehow. That talent forced teams to tolerate behavior that would have ended almost any career. Even after retirement, the headlines kept coming, cementing his reputation as both legend and a warning sign. On this roster, Taylor is the linebacker because that position demands leadership and accountability. When the most powerful voice in the room is also the most unstable, discipline completely breaks down, boundaries disappear, and everyone else starts playing on edge, unsure if brilliance or disaster is coming next. Cornerback. Deion Sanders was confidence turned into a person, and no one in football ever embraced the spotlight the way he did. He talked louder than anyone, dressed flashier than anyone, and backed it up by shouting down receivers better than anyone. But Deion never truly blended into a locker room. Teammates often felt secondary to the brand, cameras, and the constant self-promotion. He skipped meetings, clashed with coaches, and made it clear football was only one part of his content empire. Even his team hopping, winning a Super Bowl with one franchise and another the very next season, fed the belief that loyalty came second to leverage. Later, as a coach, that same energy followed him, with critics accusing him of burning bridges while building hype. On this dysfunctional team, Deion fits at cornerback because that role thrives on isolation. Corners live alone, trust themselves, and accept being different. When that independence turns into wild ego, it can divide a roster fast. Primetime delivered greatness, but he always did it on his own terms, no matter the cost. Safety. Darren Sharper built his reputation as one of the smartest defenders in football. A ball-hawking safety who seemed to know plays before they even happened. He won championships, earned All-Pro honors, and transitioned smoothly into media after retirement, appearing polished and respected. Then, everything collapsed. Accusations surfaced that Sharper had been drugging women and committing assaults across multiple states, a pattern that stretched for years without detection. Investigators uncovered similar stories in different cities, all pointing to the same behavior hidden behind fame and trust. Sharper eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to nearly 2 decades in prison, ending his public image in the most devastating way possible. Former teammates and fans were left stunned, questioning how someone so visible hid something so dark for so long. On this team, Sharper is the safety because that position is built on trust and protection. Safeties see everything and keep everyone else secure. When the last line of defense becomes the greatest threat, the entire structure collapses, leaving shock, betrayal, and damage that no scheme can ever fix, especially not this scumbag. Kicker. Justin Tucker was supposed to be automatic, the most reliable kicker in NFL history, the one player that everyone trusted when the game was on the line. For years, he was exactly that, breaking records and becoming the most accurate kicker the league had ever seen. Then the headlines changed. Tons of allegations surfaced involving inappropriate behavior during massage sessions. And while Tucker denied any wrongdoing, the investigation dragged on publicly. The Ravens released him, and the league handed down a suspension that fractured his spotless image overnight. Suddenly, the most stable position in football became another source of tension and debate. Teammates were forced to answer questions, fans took sides, and the quiet reliability kickers are known for vanished. On this team, Tucker fits because kickers are supposed to calm chaos, not create it, and definitely not assault people at a massage parlor. Nobody should be doing that. When even the specialist becomes a distraction, it shows how deep dysfunction has spread. Head coach. Urban Meyer entered the NFL acting like his resume alone would carry authority. It didn't. In Jacksonville, the results collapsed immediately. The Jaguars opened 0-4, including a nationally televised Thursday night loss to Cincinnati, where Meyer skipped the team flight home and was filmed at an Ohio bar with a young woman who wasn't his wife. On the field, the team went 2-11 under his watch, averaging under 15 points per game and finishing winless at home. Trevor Lawrence, the first overall pick, threw 9 touchdowns to 17 interceptions in an offense that looked disorganized and completely lifeless. Behind the scenes, the dysfunction was even worse. Meyer infamously hired strength coach Chris Doyle, only to fire him 1 day later after public backlash. He benched James Robinson, the team's best offensive player, for minor mistakes, then publicly blamed assistants for losses, at one point calling them losers and demanding they defend their resumes. Former kicker Josh Lambo even accused Meyer of kicking him during warm-ups and telling him to make your fucking kicks. Trust vanished completely. Players tuned him out, and rightfully so. Coaches leaked stories, and ownership lost patience. Meyer was fired before even completing his first season, becoming one of the fastest and most humiliating coaching failures in NFL history. On this team, Urban Meyer fits perfectly. A coach who preached discipline but had none of it inside of him. A master of the misfit toys per se, because he's also a misfit toy himself. Put all these personalities together and the locker room would fracture almost instantly. Michael Vick trying to lead while Antonio Brown and Terrell Owens fight over targets, Richie Incognito intimidating his teammates, and Urban Meyer taking a big doo-doo on top of all of it. Raw talent might steal a few early wins. I mean, you can't be too bad with Lawrence Taylor in the backfield. But eventually, constant feuds, suspensions, and distractions would sink the season fast, leaving this team limping to a 4-13 record and remembered more for chaos than football. If you like this video, YouTube thinks you're gonna absolutely love this next one. So show the channel some support and give it a watch.